We've already seen the lives and stories of four Shiva Saints. Today, in this session, we are going to see and learn about Sekkizhar. Now, Sekkizhar was very famous for his epic composition called Periya Puranam. And one of the things that people also will remember Sekkizhar for is about the first few words of his epic volume, which is Ulagelam Unarndu. And so today, let's go behind the story of who Sekkizhar was and what is so momentous about his Periya Puranam. Now, back in 14th century, which is like 600 years back, there is this town called Kundratur in Tamil Nadu. You see the map over here, that is Chennai. And Chennai is famous for the Chennai airport. So when you land in Chennai for your vacations, you will most probably be landing in Meenambakam International Airport. So you see over here in the map. Now a little further west of Chennai Airport is Kundratur, a small town. Back then it's also. Now 600 years back in that town, there was a small boy born to the minister, one of the ministers in the king's court. And he was named Arulmozhi Devan. Now, the father of Arulmozhi Devan, being a minister in the court, met the king oftentimes. The king at that time was Kulothunga Chola, or also known as Anabhaya Chola. And now the king, when he met the father, sometimes would meet the son, Arulmozhi Devan. On one particular occasion, the king had a question and the father couldn't answer it. And very interestingly, Arulmozhi Devan answered it. And he was still a pretty young lad at that time. The king was very impressed. And he immediately asked that, I want Arulmozhi Devan to be my minister also. And so thus Arulmozhi Devan also became a minister to the same king. And he flourished, or he evolved into being a great scholar, a great poet, other than doing his ministerial duties. And so just a few words on our Raja. Now, if you see in those days, even today, there are many religions in the world, right? If you are a follower of Christ, you are in the religion of Christianity. If you follow Buddha, then you're in the religion of Buddhism. Similarly, there was a religion at that time called Jainism. And Jainism had a lot of followers throughout India. There were a few saints of Jainism who were followed a lot. And Kulothunga Raja was very fascinated by this religion and the tenets of this particular religion. Sekkizhar was a devotee of Lord Shiva and he followed Shaivism. So anyone who followed Lord Shiva would be following the religion of Shaivism. And Sekkizhar, he watches his Raja getting fascinated by Jainism. And he knows the interests of the Raja. But he also wanted the Raja to realize that the current religion, Shaivism itself, is great. And so one day what happened, Kulothunga Raja is reading a book of his. And Sekkizhar comes into the king's chambers for some state duties. And both of them sit down and discuss, and they're done with their duties. After that, Sekkizhar asks the Raja, what book are you reading? And the Raja says, oh, Sekkizhar, this is a beautiful book. It's called Sivaga Sindamani, and it's about this religion called Jainism. Have you read this book? It's brilliant. And Sekkizhar is like, yes, I have read this book. It's a very good literature, Raja. But can I tell you something that's very fascinating, more fascinating? And Kulothunga is interested. What are you talking about? And Sekkizhar says, have you heard about the stories of the Shiva Saints? And now Kulothunga is wondering, because till now he's only heard about the stories of Lord Shiva as sung by the saints. But he hasn't known about the saints themselves, the stories of the saints. And so he asks Sekkizhar, I haven't actually heard about them, but do you know? And Sekkizhar says, of course, I know. I read a lot about them, and so yes, I do know. And Kulothunga is happy. Why don't you tell me a story right now? And Sekkizhar immediately tells one of the stories of the Shiva Saints. And Kulothunga is very interested right now. I want one more story. And Sekkizhar says, not now, I'll tell you tomorrow. And the next day, the king can't wait to hear about another story. And Sekkizhar this time again tells another beautiful story. And the king cannot wait. Every day, day after day, Sekkizhar keeps telling one new fantastic story, another incredible story, another amazing story. And at a point of time, Kulothunga gets an idea. Now, Kulothunga is not like many kings. He is very knowledgeable and he wants to spread his knowledge to others. Unlike other kings who would prefer, just fighting and getting territories or just taking things from others and keeping it for them, he wants to share his knowledge. And so he asks Sekkizhar, why don't you write a book? A nice book with all the stories that you're telling me and that you haven't told me. And then let's publish it. And it's a brilliant idea because Kulothunga wanted this knowledge not just for people in his kingdom that day, but if he didn't write the book that day, you and me won't know these stories. And Sekkizhar is like, write a book? I've never written a book in my life. But since the king is asking me, let me try. I'll try my best. And now the convinced king says that, okay, go to Chidambaram and start writing the stories for me. Don't worry about any finances. I will take care of your stay and the food and everything. I want you to write me the stories of the Nayanmars. Nayanmars is the word given for the Shiva Saints. There are 63 of them. There are many more of them, but 63 very famous of them. And so he asks him to go ahead to Chidambaram. And when you think of Chidambaram, it is the Lord Shiva himself in the Nataraj form. Chidambaram is also known as Thillai. And so if you see on the left hand side here, that is how he is in Thillai, in Chidambaram, in the pose where his one feet is on top and hands on top with it's a very famous Nataraj pose. And if you haven't been there, you should visit the temple. It's very beautiful. And the pond over there is called Sivagangai Tirtham. So Sekkizhar goes all the way to Chidambaram, goes and takes a dip in the pond and comes out. And only after the dip, they clean themselves, and then Sekkizhar goes into the pillared mandapam over there. So if you see the pillars over there on the side, 1,000 of them in the temple. And he goes in that place to start writing his book. Now, have you had the feeling where you have paints, like you want to paint a picture, you have paints, you have canvas, but you don't know where to start? Now, Sekkizhar had this doubt. How do I start? What do I do? I know everything, but how do I begin the whole thing? And it is said that Lord Nataraj himself comes before him and gives him the first word, which is Ulagalam Unarndu. He gives him the whole verse, actually, the first verse of the entire composition. And he tells Sekkizhar to start with this. And that's it. Sekkizhar's mind is clear now, and he knows what he has to write. And he starts writing. Day in and day out, he starts writing from what all he knows. He finishes and compiles it like a thick book and goes and gives it to the Raja. And the Raja calls it the Periya Puranam. And he is so happy about what Sekkizhar has achieved. And so he takes him on the royal elephant in a procession around the entire town using the same fan, the feather fan that is used against the Raja. So the Raja's attendants would fan him and he fans Sekkizhar. This is to imply how momentous, what a momentous occasion that is, and to respect Sekkizhar for his work. And so this Periya Puranam was read over and again by many scholars. And a few pointers about Periya Puranam. 4,253 verses. It's not a mean task. And all of them are wonderful stories of the 63 Nayanmars. And this became so important that they added it to the last of the Thirumurais. So up until then, you had only 11 Thirumurais. Your Devaram comes in the Thirumurai list. And this Periya Puranam became so important that it got added as the 12th volume. So now we have 12 Thirumurais. And what is great, why is Periya Puranam so important? Right? If you think about it, Periya means big. Puranam, what is so big about it? Now think about it. All the other Puranams are about God. You have Skanda Puranam, you have Vishnu Puranam, you have Devi Puranam, but Periya Puranam is about the devotees of God. And that is what makes it Periya or big. And it implies that the devotees of God are so powerful and much more humbled and devoted. And what they devoted their life to God, which is humanity and every other living being. And so that makes it more important. And today, if you go to Kundratur, you see there is a temple out there. This is an actual temple for Sekkizhar in the town of Kundratur. And so remember, Sekkizhar was not a god, but he nearly did equivalent to God's work. And so for him, there is a temple. So today, if you go to Chennai and you want to visit Kundratur, be sure to see his temple out there. So that's Sekkizhar and his Periya Puranam. Thank you.